Hey everyone, it's Kong with the 20.5th issue of the Langrisser Lookout. Back after a brief hiatus, while I got myself mentally resituated after the holidays. That means this is essentially the first issue of 2021, and let's hope this is a better year, right? In the spirit of optimism, I said I was going to make this a better episode than usual, but what I actually ended up doing is making this 2 episodes, so that's gotta be better than 1 episode, right? I recorded the community news update in a separate video because it was getting a little bit too long to have both of these halves in one video, so I'll link to that one here and after the video in case you want to jump back and forth between them, but for now, this half is going to be just the Kong update. Starting of course with a summoning update. Now, the only banner I've summoned on since the last update way back in December was the Rosenseal and Clotaire banner. And I had the usual luck of Kong there, getting off-banner Cherie and Claret, and pulling 1 copy of Rosenseal before building up my current 90 pity, which I'm saving to draw 1 SSR from the current upcoming Mariel and Tiny Jessica banner. So now that I know Tiny Jess is coming back on a Destiny banner in the summer, my plan is just to pop that first pity SSR and then spread my scarce vouchers and crystals around between the Sakura Wars crossover rerun, a guaranteed Destiny Nomi, and then Hilda in March. So anyway, all this means that my lifetime SSR rate is still hanging low at 1.75%. For an Awakening update, I did awaken Ainz for my video guide, which I posted back then. I also awakened Rosenseal instantly because it's pretty much what she's for. And I awakened Zerida when her recent 3C was released. Now, actually, let's hop back in there and I can talk about my gates. I did get Arianrod up to 6 star in January, and as you saw, I worked Rosenseal up to 4 star. And with this latest batch of 18 Gates of Fate, I have been working on Sigma, getting ready for his SP class, and also continuing to chip away at the Sage of the Trees. And then with my extra gates, I've been tossing a few sweeps here and there at PvE specials like Shelfaniel and Omega. So I guess this is as good a time as any to kickstart the 15th Gates of Folly community poll, which is now live on my community page. The poll is going to be active all day Monday until the in-game server reset, at which point I'll start farming up whoever wins the vote all the way up until the next issue of the Lookout in 2 weeks. Or if I end up extending this and having the Lookout be like a monthly thing, then I'll make it 2 weeks and then I'll give Kong the choice after that. We'll see what happens. A little bit of flexibility never hurt anyone. So let's move on and talk about gear. There's actually not a ton of action on the gear front, other than 2 honorable mentions. 1. Santa Claus dropped off a very nicely wrapped package that had a stuffed Juglar inside, my very first Juglar plushie, and a nice thing to knock off the wish list. 2. During my weekly weapon gambles, I actually got my first ever blue star, and I don't think I'll necessarily be using it, but it is another weapon that I never had before, so that's something to knock off the list. Actually, speaking of which, this is a good time to take another look at what I'm missing. So for weapons, I'm still missing Mistletoe and Uller's Bow. And I'm not too worried about Uller's Bow because I'm probably just going to pull it out of my 730-some day free weapon pack. Now I have all the armor and all the headwear. For accessories, I'm still missing Thor's necklace, and that's okay. And I'm missing the Insidious pendant. And as I hinted earlier when talking about gates, my Omega's still not quite up to snuff anyway, so there's no real rush on this one. I'm also missing everything from this new equipment banner, so let's take a quick look at these things. The new weapon is a dagger called Crystal Stinger. It boosts crit damage and crit rate and allows you to ignore 20% of your target's defense if you have more skill. Ignoring a big chunk of defense like that makes up for the slightly lower base attack from being a dagger, making it an excellent weapon for several assassins, including Zerida and Sigma. The new headpiece is a light helm called the Doomsday Herald. It has a 50% chance to inflict cannot be healed debuff on a nearby enemy after taking action. It's theoretically good on units that tend to end their turns in the mix of enemies rather than near your own allies, where you'd usually prefer a King's Crown for the damage buff. I'm kind of unconvinced by the base magic defense boost and the 50% proc rate, so you'll have to decide how it fits your own playstyle. The new armor is a robe called Twilight Guard, and this one is fairly straightforward. It grants 10% magic defense, and it boosts healing effects by 10%, making it good for someone like Rosenseal, whose job is literally just to stand there and get as much healing out as possible. Finally, the new accessory is the Heart of Gaia. It has base attack and defense, grants plus 5% to all stats, and prevents effects that reverse your outgoing or incoming healing. This can make it good for someone like Yusuke, who appreciates the stats and would rather not become trapped by his own self-healing. As for more widespread use, Lestelle is a bit less common than she used to be, and Rosenseal is here to help with the debuffs anyway, so don't break the bank trying to get a ton of these. Let's actually see if we can't get anything off this banner real quick. I think I can spare 10 summons, knowing that I'm not going to have to go too hard on the Tiny Jess banner, and knowing that summoning here won't mess with my pity, so let's pop in and see what we can get. Feels lonely without the pity thermometer over here. So I'm going to get an SSR, at least one piece of SSR gear. Let's see if it's on banner. That's not SSR. It's funny to see these, like, assets for the junk equipment that you never actually look at, because I don't know what these things are. That's an SR staff. That's a hammer. It's Last Rites! Okay, that's a good pull. I mean, I do have a lot of Last Rites. And it's off banner, so it's not new. It's not filling in a gap for me, but interesting. That's a pretty funny pull, because Last Rites is another one of those pieces of gear that you can kind of really never have too much. Lots of characters, if they can equip Last Rites, they want Last Rites, so that's a fairly good pull. I just wanted to put something out there, RNG, and see what happened. And I got a good piece of gear in 10 summons, so I'm not going to complain about that. Alright, let's have an overdue rundown through my training grounds. Infantry is by far my most neglected troops in terms of stats at least. I do have heavy infantry and masked maids and guardian infantry maxed in here. For lancers, I got their defensive stats up to 70%, and I also maxed out heavy centurions and phalanx, maxed stone colossus, and maxed out crystal molders, as well as consolidate defenses. Cavalry are only a handful of mats away from being 70% across the board, but in here I think only Royal Cavalry and Unicorns are maxed. I'd love to be able to get Templars and Bone Dinos and Heaven's Guards and Mech Knights up. I did work on Group Charge and Fine Steel Hooves and Rapid Route instead. The Flying Aqua Tree is of course 70% across the board, although the individual troops that I use in here are fairly limited. So I've got Lobster Behemoths and Angels and Steel Wings all maxed, but I've been kind of coasting by on lower level Gargoyles and Vampire Bats and Griffin Knights and Holy Pegs and Leviathans, so when I start using a character who really needs one of those all the time, then I guess I'll just have to focus on cranking those up. For Assassins, I have their attack at 70%, and I have Bandits, and Bolt Rangers, and Mist Dancers, and Firebrand Snipers, as well as Killing Breath and Jungle Ranger maxed out. Now for the Holy and Demon tree, this was actually my second tree to hit 70% all across the board, and I've also got my Skeleton Knights and Hellfire Archers, Sorceresses, and Shrine Maidens all maxed. Oh, I've got Crystal Warlocks and Forest Priests maxed as well, and I've got Holy Light Protection just for good measure. So I've got fairly decent progress on the training ground since I started actually working on farming Anarchies. My stats are in decent shape, most of the troops that I use all the time are in decent shape, and I'm just working on cleaning up a few extra little things like finishing off hit points here on Cavalry before I start really saving up and delving into the new stat nodes that were released. Now moving over to my bonds, I've been trying to stay on top of maxing out everyone that I'm planning to use for PvP, so the advances in here aren't as groundbreaking or interesting as they used to be, although I did bring Grenier up to 100%. Why? Why? Finally, I do have a PvP update for this week as well. So I went 4-1 in my qualifying matches to seed into Gold 3 again, which is my usual stomping grounds. If I'm being honest, my typical problem with Apex Arena is simply that I don't really have time to play. It sucks that it's only available on weekends, which for me are usually either recording and editing time, or non-pandemic traveling time, or puppy training time. So that said, I am going to try to make a concerted effort to play more matches this season and just see where I can end up. Okay, so that brings us to the grand finale of the first Kong update of 2021, which is me saying goodbye and then playing the thunder sound effect. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you, as always, for all your feedback and advice and encouraging comments. Stay tuned for the next episode of Should You Summon later this week, and then I'll catch you in the next Langrisser Lookout.